hope everybody's doing good. We are here today with a bass player and musician here in Kansas City, Brian Hicks. How you doing?
Good, Rob. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I know I have no idea where I would have met you. It had to have been probably at a jam or something around town. I can't remember when we first met, but you've been a guy that's a lot of people have talked about over the years. Just being a player in town, a good one. And
I've been around for a minute. Yeah. I know we met over at Matt Hopper's house one time.
Okay,
I think that was when
it.
we really
Yeah.
kind of officially shook hands.
That probably was. Yeah, that was probably right when I got into town.
Yeah,
'Cause I wouldn't have been over at his house.
Right. Yeah,
very
I mean it's
often.
been a while since he's lived at that place.
Right. Yeah, but Matt's a great player. He's a
Matt's
very
great.
good guitar player. So for those who don't know you that well, or especially a lot of people know you right now, but tell me a little bit kind of how you got started playing and what you've kind of done in the past.
Oh man, when I was a kid, I took guitar lessons for a minute with a guy named Ray Naylor. I think was really the only official guitar teacher I ever had, and he, where I went to Wyandotte County Music Center in Wyandotte Plaza over in where I grew up. I may have been in third grade, and I took lessons for about 4 months or something like that, and I quit. I didn't practice. I didn't get interested. Strangely enough, one of the first real groovy bands I ever played with was Rich Hill and the Riffs featuring Ida Macbeth, and I found out, as after we had been playing for a while, that Ray Naylor and Ida had played together for a number of years before we played together. So, but I stopped playing, stopped taking lessons. I mean, I'm in grade school, and then I started playing again when I was about seventh grade. I started playing guitar, and I could kind of still remember a little bit about what I had learned in the lessons, but I just started picking up. I learned some chords and get some new chords. I remember a guy taught me how to play House of the Rising Sun, Eric Burdon and the Animals thing. I picked up a little more, and I had older brothers that were into music, and it was all the music of the day. So I remember when the Woodstock record came out. After Woodstock, I remember listening to that stuff, and the Beatles. I can remember George Harrison when All Things Must Pass came out, and I had the flu one time, and my dad asked me if there's anything. He always got me 7-Up when I was sick like that, and I asked him to go stop by the Wyandotte County Music Center and see if they had the book for All Things Must Pass. It was the George Harrison book, and Dad came in and he said, "Well, they didn't have that. They had." He named some other. He just made something up. It was just that was his sense of humor. It was something like. And then he pulled it out, and it was a great surprise. And my dad and I used to, he taught me how to. He would tune my guitar. I think Dad. Dad was always, liked music, and he was an old country boy, and I had this country book of country hits, greatest country hits, and my dad and I would sit in my bedroom, and he played a little guitar, and I played a little better than he did, and we'd sing harmonies and things like that. So
That's neat. Yeah.
yeah, it was good memories there.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've had so many people on the show, and I mean, basically all of them have said the music was in the house at in some level. Mom taught vocal lessons, or Dad loved music, or was something.
My mom played a piano. She had, somewhere along the line, she had taken lessons, learned to play the piano. I remember anytime she'd sit down at the piano when I was young, she'd play San Antonio Rose. That was Mom's piano song. Dad had this little lick that he used to play. He'd play Wabash Cannonball. He had this little, boom, doom, 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 doom thing that he'd play. He was real proud of that lick, that he played. And he played a little harmonica too.
Yeah.
I ended up playing harmonica later, a little later on. Really, the first band I ever played in was about my senior year of high school, and that's how I got in that band. We had moved to El Dorado Springs, Missouri, down southwestern Missouri, and there was a band playing in Rockville, and they played Rocky Mountain Way, a Joe Walsh song, and I asked them if I could sit in on it, and I played. I did a little harmonica solo, and they got me in the band. And I played rhythm guitar and harmonica and sang, and got a girlfriend that night. And, it was like a lot of attention and a girl. That was a big draw. That was a big draw for me.
Sure.
Music. I mean, I love music, but I also, I was pretty insecure, and that I could see where that was a way to get affirmation.
Sure. Yeah. I think we all feel that way. I mean, all of us like music. Nobody on stage doesn't like music. I mean, you just don't do it. And if you don't like it, but there's kind of that other attention-y thing going on.
Absolutely.
And if you don't want that, even the drummers that don't love the complete spotlight, there's still a little. I would still argue there's still a little bit that they don't want to admit to that, or else they just stay in their basement. You know what I mean? And so that I think there's a little bit of that.
I think you're right, and I was never a jock. I wasn't an athlete. I didn't have that going for me. It just like I say, it was about. I had, a lot of insecurity, a lot of self-doubt and things, and I've had that all my life, even in music as well.
Yeah.
And it's been a struggle to overcome that. I've overcame it in different ways, and some of them, most of them didn't work. Ultimately.
Sure. I think I'm probably similar to you. I don't know if you feel this way, but musically, I always felt almost arrogant, because I started so young, and that was always, ultimate confidence. But then when it came to everything else, I kind of went a little insecure. It was almost compensation or something. There was something going on there that was weird.
Well, I got in, really early on in my career, I got into some pretty successful bands, and that bolstered my confidence, and it made me very cocky, and I was also drinking a lot, and had a kind of living in a certain delusional illusion, I was getting a lot of attention, but wasn't really putting out a lot of effort, to be a better musician or a better person. Really, I wasn't. I was just, just look at me, come on, I just wanted praise, I just wanted approval, and I got a lot of it.
Right.
Not for the right reasons, I don't believe. I had I was an all right player. I'm an all right player. It doesn't really matter too much to me. That's probably my biggest accomplishment is in my life, is that I just feel that it's a gift. The opportunity to do what I do, and to enrich people's lives or something, make people, happy, that's a gift. It's, my musicianship, whatever I have is a gift. Having 10 fingers is a gift, being, healthy, having eyesight, and all that. It's all a gift, and that's really what it boils down to. I mean, music is just something that I'm lucky enough to do. But I'm lucky enough to just be able to wake up and breathe and just that's really where it's at.
Yeah, I mean that's a good attitude to have. Yeah, I mean it's a what's the word? Yeah, that's just that's a oh goodness gracious, that's a good attitude to have. To be I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but so talk about that a little bit. Like that is actually a big deal in the music scene with like kind of drugs and alcohol. I mean that's a thing that a lot of people kind of deal with in one way or another. And
Well,
and talk a little bit about that.
I was, I mean, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I guess that's what I'm supposed to call myself.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I was, I have always been that. Even, I think that was just something I was born as. And when I discovered alcohol and drugs, because I do drugs the same way I drink, it filled a hole, and it did a lot of things for me. It made me brave. It made me confident. It initially it was something.
Liquid courage.
Yeah. That's and at some point it owned me. And then so at in the beginning of that part of my of what I am, I'm an alcoholic. When I first started drinking, it did something I couldn't do on my own for me. And then it just took from me. It took, it just, by the later stages of it, I could not find joy. I could not find joy. All I lived for was to drink, and that was, it was as simple as that. I wasn't a musician anymore. I was just a drunk. And I wasn't much of anything. I wasn't a son. I was just lost. And that's a hell of a place to be. And I had enough awareness to realize that this is where I've fallen. Up to a point, I had just kind of given up to it. I'd surrendered to that. And as my whole existence was just to keep my blood alcohol level up at a certain place. Music had nothing to do. I had nothing to do with music. Occasionally, I could pull myself back into this. Have some hope for the future. And that's probably why I'm still here. Is that at some point I did. I just said I've got to get out of this, and I just took a couple of right turns, and just found myself.
Started to go on a better path. Yeah.
Well, I thought I had to sober up. I had to detox. Go through the process of getting the alcohol out of my system, and then becoming stronger and be able to. But that happened a bunch of times. That would happen a lot. And a number of times I thought that I was finished with it, and I wasn't. I wasn't. I'd go for a long period of time without drinking anything, and then at some point it was like my brain I told myself that it was a good idea to take a drink, and that's the dangerous part of it for me, is that every once in a while I'll play tricks on myself, and so I've got a different way of doing it now, but I won't go into that, but
Yeah, I know. I heard something. I think I probably said this on the show before, but Wynton Marsalis had a really interesting take on this, where he was talking about, because they were talking about Parker and Coltrane, all them doing heroin and all that, and he was saying that a lot of times, because I know they talk about this in AA and different places, where a lot of times it's just a distraction, because a lot of people will just fill that void. It's cigarettes one moment, and then it's weed the next, and it's alcohol, and it's not really any one thing. It's the distraction for some people.
Oh, I think so.
And he was talking about how, especially when you're up on stage and definitely playing music where you're in this like world thing, I mean, you're in this whole universe in your head of making structures and coming up with solos, and it's this whole distraction thing. Then when the gig's over, you're back to real life again.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting way of put it, because and notice what happens after the gig is you go back to that heroin drinking whatever after the gig to distract yourself again, because you've just had this distraction. Yeah. And I don't know if that played true for you.
Well,
but that was
it did
one
at one
said.
time. I mean, I'm at stage 5. So I don't work. I don't play if I'm drinking. I'm not playing.
Right.
I've gotten to a point where I have physical. It's like I've had neuropathy. I hemorrhage. I have seizures. I'm an old man now. It's like there's also that consideration. But I haven't been able to play if I'm drinking the way I drink.
Yeah.
If I'm drinking, I'm gonna drink the way I drink, and the way I drink, music is not
possible. Yeah.
You
I
know.
think what he was talking about more is just a general state of your mind over these like last 7 years or whatever, how people just get in a distraction mode, and the music helps play it. I think that's more, not day to day, but an overall thing. And I know that that's just funny, because we're the only, I can't really think of it, maybe bartending or something, but what other industry lets you like drink at work like a musician?
Well,
That's
you kind of
just
have
a
to be
weird
self-employed, and it helps to work in a bar, and the writers are notoriously heavy drinkers, and artists, and anybody who's working for themselves, and so you have to be
disciplined.
Yeah, but you're also trying to be inspired. You want to be inspired and everything, but you have to do the work. That's the thing. Is that the work is what that's the. I think that's good work is a heavy thing, man. It's something that it's a sacrament, and I think I've always been looking for like a magic bullet, for everything, It's like as long as things don't take too much effort, or as long as I can see can touch the reward. I'm very reluctant to do most anything. I'm pretty lazy.
That's interesting.
I'm pretty lazy. I'm pretty, I want instant gratification. I've always been that way. I want stuff for nothing. That's a part of my nature. Less now because I'm aware of it. And I'm aware, and I've lived I've experienced the folly of that way of life, of that approach to life, and so I'm still lazy. I still want instant gratification. I still want approval. I still want, but I realize that it's like man does not live on bread alone. That I have to be willing to do the right thing with no expectation of reward. And there's the paradox, and there's the dichotomy, is that, for me to live my best life, I need to be good for goodness sake, And that's
you may not see the reward right now.
No, but that's where the real reward comes. You know, that's when the real reward comes. And I find that you know, applies to almost every area of life. And so, you know, I'm a musician. That's what I do, you know, and that's how I make my money. And so I ought to try to do the best work I can do, you know, and be as conscientious about what I do as I can. But no more so than if I'm washing my dishes. You know, I want to do a good job doing that, and I want to, you know, if I, you know, doing yard work or something like that. You know, it's and just you know, when I say that, you know, I'm lucky just to be able to, you know, I mean, even the stuff that I might think of as unpleasant. Well, that's just life, you know. I mean, I try not to label experiences as good or bad. It's just, you know, for me, alcohol was, I think about this a lot of times. I think, you know, one of the things that leads me to take that drink has led me to take that drink even when I know I shouldn't, is that it's like that, you know, that in case of emergency break glass, you know, it's that last thing, you know, when there's a crisis, you know, as I break that glass. The only problem is that, you know, it's like in case of fire, break glass, you know, is that I'm just putting putting gasoline on the fire. When I break that glass, it's just everything gets worse.
Yeah, sure.
You know, there's a saying that, you know, I mean, among my type, you know, among alcoholics, is that there is no problem so bad, nothing so bad that a drink won't make it worse.
Yeah.
But I got to remember that all the time. So I have to do the things that make me remember that. You know, so I have to go certain places and be around certain people, and you know, I have to remind myself daily, you know, what I am.
Yeah.
But it's not all, you know, it's not all alcohol. I'm not just an alcoholic. I have to remind myself what I am beyond that. But that's the thing that I've got to take care of first.
Yeah.
Or
probably the laziness would fall in that category. Like
just
reminding yourself that I'm like this.
It's not terminal. Right. My alcoholism is terminal.
Yeah.
Laziness is not terminal. I can do something about that. All I got to do there is just, well, you know, I can be. I just do what I'm reluctant to do.
Right. On that topic, the like for myself, I mean, I smoked weed for 13 years. You know, it was from about noon on. You know, every day, and so
I did too.
And I've been
longer,
trying.
Yeah.
I've had this problem recently because I quit about 4 or 5 years ago, and that was right at the time when I started to kind of understand about the whole personal responsibility argument, you know, because when I was in music, I would know that, I can't just blame everybody else. I need to go practice, you know, with musically. Yeah. But then in my regular life, I wasn't putting, you know, I wasn't consistencing that up, you know, going like, man, if I'm going to be consistent, I need to like kind of take this mentality in my regular life and my music. Now, so then for a while I went like so far on the other, you know, before, I don't know if I was a blamer, but I went really far and basically blaming everything, that every single thing that happened was definitely something that I had done. You know, like not having any money, and I looked, hey, the last 8 years I haven't really tried that, you know. So every single thing was, I tried to make every single thing my fault, and I understand that that's also a slippery slope, you know, because every single thing in life isn't always your fault, but a lot of it is. But so then getting back to gigging, what I find frustrating is that when I'm not getting as many gigs as I want, or as many calls or whatever, I definitely have to chalk a lot of it up to things that I've done in the past. But then I'll hear some other guys talk about, like, for example, in the 90s, they were they were like, man, I was in a terrible band and we had 6 nights a week, you know, and so there's that other kind of stuff where I'm at again, kind of a paradox myself, because I want to make it me, You know, I want to make the problem me, but then I hear all these other people, and I heard another guy talk to a booking agent the other day. He's like, so how is the music business? And they said dismal. You know, that's the word they made, is dismal, you know, compared to the 90s or 70s or whatever. And what would, do you have any opinions about that, about musicians and getting gigs and the kind of this personal responsibility, and how much can you just dump on yourself? And do you have any thoughts on that, or?
Oh man. Well, you know. Okay, I play bass. I play guitar as well, you know. And but bass has been my bread and butter. And you know, there was a time when I was younger where, you know, if I was making the scene and just had a working telephone, you know, I could usually find work. It just kind of came to me, you know. I mean, it was because I play the bass. Somebody needs a bass player. Now, you know, I operate in the jazz world, you know. I mean, the mainstream, you know, that's mostly what I've done, and I could find work, and even when I was unhealthy, and you know, I'd be off for a while, you know, I'd be out of commission for a while, you know, and then, you know, if word got around that I was healthy again, I'd start getting work, because not a whole lot of bass players weren't, you know. At some point, that kind of changed for me. You know, it was like I started getting older. And this is just my experience. You know, about 10 years ago, no, not 10 years ago, longer than that. No, it was about 10 years ago. About 10 or 12 years ago, I was homeless for about a year, you know, and
Wow.
wasn't working. I mean, wasn't working. I was out of, you know, I was just underground. I was, you know, just way off,
Yeah.
you know, off the screen. And when I sobered up and came back in, you know, got back on the scene, it seemed as though it was a whole different scene. You know, and there were players that, you know, people I didn't know that were like playing, you know. And man, you know, even though I was healthy and ready to play, I wasn't in the loop, you know. And it worried the hell out of me. And that was when I started teaching. You know, but I kind of kept playing. I got a little thing at YJ's down, you know, I started playing there on Sundays, and I was using guys that were, you know, the new young Lion guys, young guys that were, you know, so I was getting to know some younger guys, and you know, and these are sharp guys, and they're around, you know, but I really felt like kind of like, you know, this washed up. I really felt that way.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, a lot of that old insecurity coming back too, you know. And I did my chops. I didn't have much, you know, a lot of chops, and I had a different kind of approach to playing. You know, these guys were all coming out of university. You know, had a different way of looking at, you know, and the computers and phones and changes on the phone, and you know, and there's, you know, it's all this all this technology and all these resources that I wasn't hip to, and you know, I could barely get on email, man, you know. And, that was a kind of a rude awakening for me. So I didn't work much for a good 7 years, or 7 or 8 years. And And it was the first time in my life that I wasn't able to find work, you know. I mean, I wasn't getting calls. I wasn't, you know. It just seemed like nothing was panning out.
Right.
You know, and I was staying sober, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I was, you know, responsible. I was showing up, basically, you know. But I really wasn't.
Mm.
Really wasn't showing up.
Mm.
You know, I wasn't making calls. I wasn't doing most of the stuff that, you know, that one just kind of needs to do in order to be self-employed in the music business. You know, I wasn't promoting myself. I wasn't using the resources that are available in order to generate work. You know, I wasn't advertising. I wasn't, you know, I just wasn't following through. And that's a lifelong habit of mine. It's not following through. I do. I think that just being a groovy guy is going to be enough. And especially when you get to be old and grizzled, you know, it's not enough. You know, I got to work a little harder at, because it's kind of a young man's world in a lot of, in young man's game. You know, I mean, it's you got the energy when you're 20 and 30 and in your 40s to make the scene, you know, and go out to the bars. Go out and just do the hang, you know.
Staying up till 12 is nothing.
Yeah, that was nothing. But you know, I mean, when I came in off the streets, all of a sudden I had myself a daughter. I didn't have my sea legs, you know. I was just trying to keep steady, you know, for a long time, and I really wasn't going out. I had other things to do. I had responsibilities, and so I wasn't making the scene. Wasn't doing the hang, you know.
Right.
The hang, man. That's a big part of it, and, you know, and I think that's part of why I could always find work, you know, earlier in my life. I don't have the energy to really do the hang now, so you know, it's I think my focus has to be a little, I have to have a little different focus now. And I can always use more work. But at this point I've got like always really, but I have a little core group of, a little herd that I run in, and we, certain little group of part of this herd I play with in certain, I've got it now to where I've got this one guy and me play about 3 or 4 times a month, and then there's these 5 people and we play a couple of times a month, or every couple of months, and this group of people we play, so it's kind of piecemealed.
Right.
I've got, I'm in a couple of different ensembles.
Yeah.
And I'm playing a couple of different instruments, and I'm just trying to, use what I've got effectively.
Sure.
And I sing as well, and that's all my life. That's been a good thing. And
Right.
a lot of the stuff that I've done has just been sort of accidental, in a lot of ways, but. I don't know if that makes sense. But.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Because, one of the big topics that I've wanted to talk about on the show a lot is this personal responsibility kind of idea with a lot of musicians. Because when, like I was telling you before we started, I have these conversations with people out of jams like every other day, of just talking about music and whatever. And I always hear, these club owners, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And the other guys in bands, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I was kind of talking about the blaming personal responsibility thing. And that's where I'm kind of stuck, because the fact that these guys were gigging so much back in the day and now there's just a little bit less work going on. But part of that is not the club owner's fault. There's the internet and there's, so that's the kind of stuff that I'm at a standstill here, where I go, well, it's not only 100% the music the music lover's fault. You know, there's just a lot more stuff
Yeah.
out in the world to compete with live music right now, and also with lessons too. I mean, there's just more lessons-y things out there for kids. You know, with taekwondo and robotics, and I mean,
Oh
there's
my God,
tons of things
yeah,
people
yeah.
can do now. So that's where I'm struggling, because I want, just like I think you were kind of trying to say, is that. I think you were trying to get at is that one of the reasons why you weren't working that much is because you were realizing that there's all this other stuff outside of the music that you were kind of doing, and that sounds personal responsibility to me.
Yeah.
But then there's this other stuff, so I don't really know.
Right.
I want it to be the personal responsibility is the problem for myself.
Yeah.
But there's this other part of it that I can't deny really, and this is definitely a much bigger, like, kind of political discussion. This whole personal responsibility attitude of people wanting to blame everything on their lives, or was some of it a little bit self-inflicted. So I'm torn with that, if you know what I mean. Like,
I have found that if I'm really honest about it, most most situations that I've found myself in, it basically comes down to me. You know, it's not like I'm blaming myself. I'm just saying. I mean, I believe in cause and effect, and that if I want to change what I'm living, it is up to me to change that. I can't expect things to just fall in my lap, although I have been very fortunate in that regard. But that only goes so far.
Yeah.
You know, that only goes so far. And there's there are plenty of young players, you know, and you know I think that they're getting better.
how many have come out of UMKC in the last 10 years?
Man.
I mean,
They're getting better, but they haven't been around as long as I have. And so, I've got to work a little smarter. I've got to use my experience. And that's something that, I'm not as quick as I used to be. I don't have the stamina I used to have. So I've got to play a little smarter.
Right.
And I don't have the time that I once had, and I wish I wish I'd used my time better when I was in my 20s, but I didn't, and that's the way it is. I wish, I might have been I might be a better player now had I done that, but it doesn't matter now because that's the way it is. That's just the way it is. I practice better now. I don't practice as much as I would like to.
It's more efficient though and better.
But I think it's more efficient.
Yeah.
And a lot of the reason I don't practice as much as I would like to is because I just don't do it. But I do practice.
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned teaching a little bit ago. Tell me about teaching, what that's kind of meant for you, or what that does for you.
Oh, once I got some skill at it, started realizing, kind of got a method, developed an approach, figured out, how do I start? What do I do next? What do I do? Where do I, it was one of the most gratifying things I've ever done. And as I've gotten better at it, it's just more and more rewarding all the time. And I think that my playing has gotten better, because it's forced me to, just the process of trying to convey to someone how to do something that I do. Occasionally I have to convey to, I have to figure out what it is I do. How do I do this?
Yeah.
What's the most efficient way to do this? And so I've had to, re-examine things that I never really thought about. The process of making music, and I mostly teach guitar, and just what is the process of getting a sound out of a stringed instrument? I mean, it's like, so, at its most, basic, and, I mean, and it's made me think about music in general, I mean, it's like, kids, stumble across, harmonics on a string, and so, 8-year-olds asking about harmonics. What are harmonics?
How do you even describe it?
Well,
that's
I
probably
mean,
what you're
and
meaning,
you carry it to its most logical extreme, and you say, that's of the universe. The concept of the harmonic series.
Yeah.
That
deep,
existed before humans. The overtone series.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we labeled it and we gave it a word, and it's got, depending on how many languages you speak, it's got a bunch of words and ways to describe, what a piece of, what a sound the journey of a tone,
Yeah.
But, man, that's some kind of deep shit that I had never really thought about much until I started teaching, and just because the question was asked, well, man, that's a good question. I should ask that myself. I really, when kids ask me something, I want to have an answer. Same with my daughter. It's you're trying to set an example for another human being. Oh man, what kind of example do I want to set? So really, in my, the teaching and the, getting sober, and just it was a transformational thing. Being a father, being a teacher, being.
And you said that all happened for you, kind of, sort of,
happened within a certain
2 years
period
or whatever.
Of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like right there about when I was about to turn 50. Getting to about the half-century mark. So all this stuff started.
Right.
A whole bunch of things lined up. For me. And
I know I struggle with when teaching because the addiction-y stuff, I'm similar with that, and definitely the self-indulgent kind of thing that I had going, or not self-indulgent, self-absorbed, that's the word, a self-absorbed kind of attitude that I had. And then when I started teaching, there was a little bit of me that I could tell that I wanted to just, be the guy and, love to hear my own voice, and that, I'm being silly, but that kind of stuff was there. But then there was also this other thing that I think you're maybe tapping into, is that there's this longing for thing of that I do want to feel like kind of worthy and doing something that matters, and the teaching is right in that wheelhouse. And so I was probably pulled on these two, problems, but it's been really great because I totally know what you mean about the not really knowing an answer to a question, because I've never really asked myself that question like you were just describing. And technique happens with me.
Oh man,
my thumb. What am I doing with my thumb? And little stuff like that is I can
When I started teaching, a guy asked me if I could, that I could teach piano, beginning piano, and it's Greg Richter.
Yeah.
And he was working with this after school reading program, the upper room thing, and huge favor. It was a wonderful thing he did for me. When he asked me to, if I could do that, I said, yeah, I think I can probably, teach kids beginning piano. It's pretty laid out, and I get a couple of books and do a few things and everything. And then, and I think actually he asked if I could teach beginning guitar, and I didn't have a guitar at the time, but I played guitar, and I'd played guitar all my life almost. And teaching piano, an instrument that I don't really play, was a whole lot easier for me than teaching the guitar.
Wow, that's
initially,
interesting. Yeah.
because I'd never really thought of there's so many goofy ways that a person can find to play the guitar, especially a 7 or 8 year old. And I was kind of depressed about the whole thing because I just didn't know what to do with somebody who had never touched a guitar before. But I realized I don't want to teach these kids guitar the way I learned, which was just real piecemeal. It's like put your finger here and do this with this, and then kind of hold. I really wanted to, because it was just so slow and ponderous and inefficient, But I came up with, so I found, some, I wanted to go towards the classical side of it. And I got a guitar and I started, practicing because I also wanted to, be able to play, and I wanted to,
demonstrate
things.
Yeah.
I want to play better than my students a little bit. And but at the same time I started observing that all of these kids tend to do this there's about 5 things that they all tend to do, and they're all things that are not good.
Yeah.
One is that you put the guitar like a dobro so you can see what's going on. You're holding the neck like a club. You're having to look at everything, so hence
staring at your left hand the whole time.
Staring at your left hand, staring at whatever, it's just
sure.
Bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
That then I started noticing.
Ours is the wrist thing.
Yeah,
this,
right.
This one's a big one for us as fiddle players. Everybody puts their wrist up on here and they're, there's just like the same thing. It's the 6 things that they all do.
The bright idea came to me to start to address those things first. And I don't know how inspired it was, but I came up with this thing of just touching the strings and naming the strings without looking at them. Do it over here, and then do it over here, and look at me the whole time you're doing it. You just repeat after me: low E, A, D, G, B, high E. And just use a completely tactile thing, initially. Put this hand in your lap, keep this hand up here. So, you have a sense that you can just balance the guitar on your lap. I don't use, strict classical approach. Don't have them, with the stool, and all that, because I don't know, man. I'm not, my classical chops are, I'm not, Christopher Parkening. That's the book I use, and I kind of stick to the Christopher Parkening book for initially,
Well, what you're talking about is them knowing it, like them staring at you, and they know where their strings are at. And that's the thing that I didn't like, and that's the thing that I noticed that I got that other classical players didn't get, is because I started ear playing, Suzuki method hard when I was a little kid, and now I was looking at them, and they have to have the music in front of them. They don't have anything memorized, but I had my fingerboard very memorized.
See now, it's kind of the. I have a similar experience. I remember when I went to college, because I had learned to play by ear. I'd learned to play, and then started reading music. I started playing cello when I was, later than most people, and that's what I was going to study when I stayed in school, and played guitar, and I was playing jazz, and so all the reading stuff came later for me.
Me too.
But then when I was in college, that first year of college, I realized, I was acing my theory and ear training stuff, because I'd already kind of I'd already gone through all that stuff on my own.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how I learned to play. So it wasn't, hearing intervals and things like that.
It was like
wasn't no big deal.
Yeah.
And that's, I was lucky, you know, I'm just a lucky guy. I guess. I don't, you know.
So here's another question. So again, kind of theming it back to when the addiction kind of stuff, because I'll have this with myself, is that there's some times where I need to get my butt in gear in general, and you know, I'll know that I'm not practicing as hard or yada yada, and then I'll get into, you know, and then I'll get into lesson, and then I'll see this other person, and it's not, you know, not as extreme as an addiction on their end, but it's, you know, they're not practicing, they're not trying it. And hip, so that's been nice for me to see the other side of, I'm like, that's what
the
these
universe,
two down here
the universe sends all kinds of messages to me,
Right.
man. If I'm paying attention, you know, and I'm just looking for the, you know, looking at, you know, everything I need is there, you know. I mean, you know, and there's, you know, it's just something to be learned all the time, you know, and teaching is a good way to get it back, you know, is to keep it, you know. I mean, there's that, you know, that concept of, you know, the only way to keep what you have is to give it away. And
that's a good quote. Yeah,
I didn't come up with it. Wasn't my idea, you know. I mean, I just, you know, I finally kind of, I believe it, you know, and you know, and I kind of had to learn I've learned a lot of things the hard way, you know. I've had to do that. Maybe I didn't have to, but apparently I did, because that's how it happened, you know. So that's cool, you know. That's all right. I'm a slow learner. That's all right too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it is right now, because I'm pretty happy right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, great. No sweat.
I struggle with the motivation stuff, like I was saying.
Oh, I do too.
Not just with me, but with a student, is that, because like, and I've talked to most of the teachers who I've had on, we've kind of dove into this topic, because I think it's the crux of the entire thing as a teacher, is that all of us know, and maybe you were similar at the beginning, where it was learning how to literally teach rhythm, or so, you know, any of these technical things. We kind of learn how to do that, but after a while, that to me becomes the easy part, and especially the diagnosing. You know, when they play, you go like, oh yeah, if I wanted to, you know, this, and this, I would fix for them eventually. But I find that the how to say it to them, the when to say it, and if you need to say it, are like the big things that I struggle with, because I already know what they probably need to hear, but it's the how to say it. And then again, that goes back to the how. I'm sure these two downstairs, you know, my parents and other teachers, you know, were obviously seeing that in me for, you know, 30 years, and you know, I wish he would this, and then so they go, well, what do we do to, you know, help kind of, no, just go over there. If you do it, you're gonna be awesome and happy, like, you know. And so I see that in myself with my students, is how do I hope to motivate them and not to become, you know, the authoritarian kind of person and come in and, you know, you just are gonna, I don't know, you know, I'm still struggling with that as a teacher, and I'm getting better, but I still struggle.
Well,
with that.
you know, if I approach with my students, I mean, if I just, you know, you know, I've got a couple of kids that I've had some really good students, you know. I mean, kids that I'm really, really proud of, and then they've gone. They're gone, you know. Then they leave, and I've got one kid right now who has been with me for a long time. I've had, you know, and he's still getting better, you know. Now, I don't know how long he's going to stay with me. Ideally, I want him to get better than me. I want him to outgrow me, you know. That's as hard as that is to accept, you know. But that would tell me that I've done my job well.
It's kind of the goal, isn't it?
It should be. It should be, you know. Because I'm not teaching him for me, although I'm benefiting a lot.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I've had some other really good kids. You know, I had a kid that left a couple of years ago. He just got tired of playing, Man, he was good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, he was really getting good, and I would say that it broke my heart, but it would, you know, I would just, I missed him when he was gone because I just enjoyed our lessons so much because he was just so delightful. You know, we were playing duets, and, you know, I mean, he brought a lot out of me, you know.
Yeah.
But I had to, you know, I had to think about, you know, why do I miss this guy? You know, is it, you know, now, you know, sure, you know, the $25 a week, you know, I miss that, you know, I mean, that's just money. You know, watching him develop and turn into a better player, it was kind of, you know, it was, how much credit can I give myself for that? You know? I mean, I was just trying to guide him and everything, and he was, you know, he did the work, kind of.
Right.
I mean, we did the work together. You know? He and I
right.
worked together real well, you know, and I enjoyed that relationship that I had with this child. And I've had some kids that left that I was, you know, kind of glad they did.
Oh darn, they left.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like that kind of thing. Yeah,
and but there I, you know, got to think, you know,
right.
part of me felt like a failure because I didn't, you know, bring them down to, you know, I got to question my motivation for almost every act in my life, you know, and that's something that does, you know, hasn't come easy for me, you know, because I, you know, it's, you know, talking about like accepting responsibility, you know, for, and also, how do I put this? You know, making excuses. You know, that's something that I'm very good at. You know, and I have to, you know, I have to be able to differentiate between a reason and an excuse.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And
there's a difference in there.
Yeah. And what each of those things imply. You know, I mean, but there might be a reason that this, you know, that I'm, but it, you know, I can't excuse myself from this or that, or excuse the. How do I put it? And where am I going?
Yeah, no, I understand. Like the reason and excuse thing is a pretty good way to put it, because that's kind of what I was getting at, and I think you and I are both on the same page where this is an absolutely perfect example of how much do I go, well, you know, there was a couple lessons that I went like, and like I've had this before where there was like a stage kind of thing where I was like teaching them improv, for example, and normally I would have taken them through a couple of these prerequisite kind of things in a lesson before I get to this moment. Well, one time I just forgot to do that, and I went from here all the way to here, and I'm like, okay, that one was on me. I forgot, you know, I just was silly and I didn't do that. But I had one lesson where a girl cried. You know, I asked her to do improv, and she straight up cried on me. You know, and so the stage thing, I think I realized the stage thing was on me. I especially for this one, because I knew what she was like, and kind of a little bit emotional kid and eighth grade girl, you know, and there was some stuff there, but there, you know, I've taught this to, you know, 12 other kids easy, and none of them cried. You know, so there, you know, that's a good example of when was it on me and how much was it on this kid, you know.
Well, there's another consideration is that, you know, and that's something that teaching has taught me, is that everybody learns at their own pace. Everybody has their own way of my daughter started doing online school this year, you know, and you know, I was real hesitant to you know give the go ahead on that, but you know, it's I think it's been a good thing for her. I think, you know, a lot of times the cookie cutter approach to, you know, things just doesn't work. You know, it just doesn't work. Everybody has, you know, is wired. We're all wired differently. You know, and you know, if I can just sort of fuel a certain curiosity in my kids,
Right.
just make them wonder, what if, and that's good. This kid that's stayed with me, I go into lessons and I see that he's practiced, and I can hear it, and when we play, and things just, I could see him just blossoming. And he's growing up too. I mean, just as a human being, just as a creature, and and the music is a part of his growth, and I'm a part of that. And I'm, it's a privilege. I mean, it's really, and now I know his family, and I know his mother and his father, and I've gotten to know their dog and his brother, and I'm allowed into that home, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It's really a groove, man.
With the motivation thing, I'm always obsessed by realizing, even somebody like me, I'm never going to be in the symphony. I've played literally all my life. I mean, that's MBA, I mean, that's like the top of the top. And so I keep thinking about, why am I here? What am I doing here in this lesson? Like, what is my role? And a lot of the non-musical things is what I keep coming back to, because I mentioned at the beginning that basically most of the pretty hardcore gigging musicians that I've talked to all had music in the home, and all of them, and there was this huge early on, and then so this huge influence early on. But then when I go to another kid who I have, they haven't really had music their whole life, and they like it and whatever, but they kind of started later, 5th grade or something, and so then I go, okay, what is this right now? Is this kid gonna be in the symphony? Probably not. Is this kid gonna even, ever be like on a big gigging band at like Knuckleheads, or is he ever gonna do something really big? Probably not. But okay, then why am I here? And I think maybe you're hitting on this, where your idea is to also be the role model. There is to, I know for me, one thing that I want to instill in them is that I'm a very attention to sometimes I'm really sloppy and I'm just go for it, but then sometimes I'm like super meticulous. A lot of times in music I can be both. Sometimes I'll just kind of wing it, and then other times I'm like, no, this needs to be that much sharper, because sometimes I'll go meticulous.
It just depends on what you're going to be happy with.
So I'm hoping that I can at least show them, even if they don't end up OCD or say, even if they don't end up like that, at least show them that, hey, usually if you're going to be really, really, really good at something, you sort of need to sort of pay attention to some sort of detail in whatever you're doing. And so I hope that that's like an example of a thing that I can share with them, even if they don't become a great musician. Maybe when they go over to a computer, they go, oh no, this is 110011000. Not be disciplined in their attention to detail in another part of their life.
Well, you're teaching the child certain lessons of persistence, and thoroughness, and just all kinds of good things. Hopefully, I mean, when one wants to focus on the the virtues of life, and I mean, ideally, I want the kid to be happy. I want to be happy. Part of being happy is, one part of being happy is just, for me, because I'm, go back to that I'm wired a certain way, or I was raised a certain way, and I have certain values, and doing a good job is a thing to strive for. Part of doing a good job is being thorough, is being responsible for what I is doing what I say I'm going to do, following
conscientiousness,
conscientious persistence, finishing what I don't be a pain in the ass. That's it's taken me a long time to realize that I can be an inferior player to someone else, But I'll get the job, you know. I mean, when it comes to, you know, push comes to shove, it's just music. Okay, you know, you know, at some point you just, you know, you want someone who's going to show up, who's not going to give you a hard time, who's going to dress the right way, who's going to, you know, going to treat people right, who's not going to draw a bunch of unwanted attention to the band, you know, or whatever. Because, you know, you get into, you know, a lot of musical situations where, you know, I mean, you're playing for a wedding reception or something like that, or playing for, you know, some corporate event. They just want some sound, you know. I mean, then they want you to look okay, and they want you to show up on time. They don't want to have to worry about you.
Right.
You know? That's a lot of the thing, you know, and that's why a lot of people will work with the same, you know, construction companies will use the same people all the time because they know they're gonna do their job.
Reliable. Yeah.
They're not, you know, I mean, and you know, I don't have to be the best player in the world because, you know, ain't a rider can't be throwed, ain't a horse can't be rode. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, I've been trying to get happy with being somewhere in the middle. You know, ain't the worst, ain't the best. It's just what I am, man. You know, I'm trying to be a better me. You know.
Kind of not being the best, but doing it. It's kind of what you know.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
you know, I mean,
you're,
that's
you're
the thing.
in the thing. And
I'm
you're
in the
doing
thing.
It and
I'm
showing
doing
up
it. You
and
know,
doing your thing. And
I play better when I play a lot.
Yeah.
Simple as that, man. You know, if I'm gigging a lot, I tend to play better because I'm, you know, I've got my hands on the instrument, you know, and everything. I got my limitations, man. You know, that's the way it goes, you know, and everything. But I can always stretch it a little bit, you know.
I mean, 280 bebop.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's
There's
you know,
some stuff I just can't do.
there are days when I can play. You know, I mean, some days, you know, I'm just clicking, man. You know, and other times, man, it's just let's just get this done. You know, let's just do what I'm supposed to do, and you know, live to fight another day.
Yeah, sure, man.
But I mean, you know, that carries through. I mean, that's just music. You know, music's just one little part of it.
Yeah.
It's just the gig of life, you know.
Yeah, sure, man. If you had, so we've kind of talked a lot about advice, but if you had one big piece of advice for like the 20-ish-year-olds starting here, like the UMKC kids or whatever coming out into the gigging world, dude, would you have one big piece of advice for them?
Don't take yourself too seriously. You know, just do your work.
It's easy to do that as a young kid, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is, you know, I mean...
Think you're a big shot?
Yeah, or, you know, you think you're going to be the next, you know, big sensation. You know, it's just do your work and be happy.
Yeah.
You know? Just, you know, time moves really fast. You know? I mean, you don't feel it until... You know, you get closer to the end, and then you realize, man, that went by like that.
Yeah.
You know?
So we're probably wrapping up here. I didn't ask you this before we started, but do you have one like really crazy gig that you played, or a real fun like kind of gig story, or
too many
or one of your favorites that you remember, like that was just a good one, or a horrible one, or like the horrible ones are usually the best stories.
Well, those I've got so many horrible, you know, I mean, not horrible, but I mean, you know, things that.
Just crazy,
are astoundingly,
awesomely
surreal. You know, Rod Fleeman and Emily Frost and I were on a gig at Chaz not too many months ago, and Bill Murray was in town, and he was making all these appearances at all these places. You know, kind of
like the actor Bill Murray.
Yeah. He was in town for a funeral. He and his brother and you know, some friends were in town for a funeral, and he was staying at Chaz, and they came in late that night, and they just hung, you know, and it wasn't like a big celebrity thing, you know, and he's not that kind of celebrity, you know, he's an old hippie, you know, and he's really down to earth. He's kind of a spiritual kind of, you know, he's kind of he's just a guy, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And that was really a groove hanging out with him, and I became I started, you know, looking at his body of work, you know, some of the things. I mean, some of the more commercial things and successful things, but then I, you know, started looking at things that he has chosen to do. You know, I realized that he doesn't do anything that he doesn't want to do.
Right.
You know, and you know, and he's lucky in that regard. You know, that he's gotten to a place where he can do what's gratifying to him. You know, and you know what, and you know, I get the feeling that he is a guy that, you know, tries to be of benefit to others.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I know a lot of us in the music business are in a rock and a hard place with that whole
Well,
idea.
you know, it's real easy to be a whore in this
Yeah,
business.
how many guys
It's
are
easy
in
to be
a random
it's
cover
easy to be
band
a
and
cheap
stuff?
whore in this
Yeah.
business, because
Uh-huh.
I mean, you know, how many of us are willing to, you know, crawl over each other's bodies to make $50? You know? And you know, it's a shame, but you know, it's kind of understandable because we just want to play. You know, we just want to play. You know,
Yeah.
you know, and all that. But you know, it's like, I don't know. I guess I'm still a whore, but I'm maybe a little less of one. You know, teaching has helped.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, man. We'll definitely keep up the good work, and I definitely wish you the best with you know, all the stuff that you've been kind of dealing with here for the last bunch of years. You know, I know there's a lot of us out here that are dealing with some of the same problems. So I really appreciate you. You know, being able to, you know, share what you've had happen, and I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to some of the stuff that you've gone through, and I'm glad that you shared.
It
some
was
of
all
that.
of my own making. You know?
Mhm,
That's what I've realized.
Yeah.
Nothing was done to me. You know,
Mm.
it was. You know, I mean, it really. You know, nothing's being done to me. You know, I'm just living it.
Yeah.
Difficulties are just, you know, I mean, once I you know, redefine crises and bad days and badness, you know, I mean, it's all just challenges. You know, I mean, it's like pain is just, you know, there's some literature that I've read where pain is the touchstone of growth. You know,
That's deep.
and,
Yeah.
you know, it's just pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a great quote, man. Well, thanks for doing what you do, and this is Brian Hicks. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking me.
No problem.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So we'll be back next time with more musicians talking about stuff. Get out of here. See you later.